There's a town in Wisconsin where, even today, people don't speak too loudly when they pass a certain empty lot. A place where the wind seems to howl just a little bit longer, and where neighbors still say you can hear something moving in the dead of night. That town is Plainfield, a quiet farming community that, in the 1950s, hid one of the darkest and most disturbing secrets in American history. It wasn't until a frigid November evening that local police uncovered a nightmare beyond anyone's imagination, a nightmare born in the mind of one man, Ed Gein. What they found inside his decaying farmhouse would haunt them for the rest of their lives. But before the headlines, before the discovery of unspeakable horrors, there were whispers, strange disappearances, and sightings of eerie figures lurking in the woods. Tonight, we step inside Ed Gein's world, a world where the dead never rested. Born on August 27, 1906, Ed Gein grew up under the heavy hand of a woman many in town feared more than they pitied, Augusta Gein. She was a devoutly religious woman who filled her sons' heads with fiery sermons about sin and damnation, warning them of the filth of the outside world. Their house, isolated on 155 acres of barren farmland, became a prison. Augusta would read to Ed and his brother Henry from the Book of Revelation, her voice sharp as a knife, filling the boys with terror of what awaited sinners beyond this life. But what happened when that dominating voice was gone? In 1945, Augusta passed away, and Ed was left alone in the farmhouse, alone with his thoughts and obsessions. From that day on, the house began to rot, mirroring the decay that had already begun in Ed's mind. And that's when the strange things began to happen. Neighbors would later recall seeing glimmers of candlelight in windows, shadows pacing back and forth. Yet no one ever knocked on Ed's door, because something about that house felt wrong, as though something watched from the darkness inside. For years, Plainfield's quiet streets masked a growing sense of dread. Local women began to vanish without a trace, among them Mary Hogan, a tavern owner last seen in 1954. No one knew what had become of her, until they entered Ed Gein's house. It was November 16, 1957, when Bernice Warden, the local hardware store owner, mysteriously disappeared. Her son, Frank Warden, a sheriff's deputy, knew something was wrong the moment he stepped into the shop. The cash register left wide open, and ominous dark stains on the floor. Later that night, authorities descended on Ed Gein's decrepit farmhouse, their footsteps crunching on frostbitten leaves. What they found behind those sagging walls was something no living soul should ever see. In a shed behind the house, under the dim glow of their lanterns, officers discovered Bernice Warden's body, strung up like a deer, her body grotesquely mutilated. But the horror was only beginning. Stepping into the house was like walking into a tomb where the dead were never left to sleep. The stench of decay clung to the walls, and every surface seemed to whisper stories of suffering. Scattered around the house were bowls made from human skulls, lampshades stitched together from human skin, and chairs upholstered in flesh. The most chilling discovery? A woman's suit, carefully sewn together from the skins of exhumed corpses. Gein had been digging up graves, stealing bodies that resembled his mother, and when the bodies weren't enough, he hunted the living. Masks made of women's faces hung like grotesque trophies. On the walls, investigators found shrunken heads, which Ed had once told a local boy were gifts from relatives overseas. But these were no gifts. They were the peeled faces of the dead. One sheriff would later say he could never forget what he saw, and many involved would never speak publicly of that night again. When questioned, Gein admitted to what he had done, but in a calm, almost innocent voice, as though describing a routine day on the farm. He confessed to digging up graves, sometimes up to 40 times, but also to taking souvenirs from those who had recently passed. "They looked like my mother," he said softly, his eyes far away. Ed Gein was obsessed with Augusta, longing to become her in some unthinkable way. He told police that wearing the woman suit made from real human skin allowed him to feel closer to his mother, to bring her back to life in a way. Even more unsettling, investigators began to wonder, Were all of his projects made from the dead? Or had Ed claimed more lives than he admitted? Though he confessed to taking 2 lives, Bernice Worden and Mary Hogan, Ed Gein was suspected in several other disappearances. Evelyn Hartley, a 14-year-old babysitter who vanished in 1953. Georgia Weckler, an 8-year-old girl never seen again after walking home. Victor Travis and Ray Burgess are 2 hunters who simply disappeared in the woods. The 2 men had stopped at a bar in Plainfield one evening in 1951, sharing drinks and swapping hunting stories before heading back out into the woods. But that was the last time anyone saw them. Their truck was found abandoned just outside of town, the keys still in the ignition, like they had stepped away for just a moment and never returned. At first, people thought they might have gotten lost or run into trouble with wildlife. But as time passed, that explanation didn't sit right. Seasoned hunters don't just disappear, and no one could figure out why there weren't any signs of a struggle. No tracks, no clues, nothing. Some locals whispered that maybe, just maybe, they had wandered too close to Ed Gein's farm. And if they had, well, chances were no one would ever find them. Though lie detector tests and lack of evidence seemed to clear him, many believed the full truth died with Ed. Some say, if you walk past Plainfield Cemetery at night, you can feel it, the weight of secrets buried deep beneath the ground. And Gein's own unmarked grave sits there among the dead, as though the earth itself refuses to give him a name. What makes Ed Gein's story so horrifying is that his crimes reached beyond Plainfield. His gruesome acts inspired some of the most famous horror stories of all time, like Psycho's Norman Bates, who was obsessed with his mother, and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre's Leatherface, who wore human skin. But no movie, no book could fully capture the true terror of Gein's world. The silent house where skin lampshades glowed, where faces watched from dark corners, and where Ed sat in the night, alone, speaking softly, to his mother. And here's something most people don't know. After Gein's death in 1984, strange reports began to surface. People visiting Plainfield Cemetery claimed to hear shuffling footsteps behind them when no one was there. Others swore they saw a pale figure standing among the graves, watching, waiting. But perhaps the most disturbing story? A group of teenagers once snuck into Gein's abandoned farmhouse before it burned to the ground in 1958. They never spoke publicly about what they saw, but one of them later told a friend, it was like something was still there. Like it was watching us from the dark. And it wasn't Ed. So now, if you ever find yourself driving through Plainfield, and you see that empty stretch of land where Ed's house once stood, think twice before you stop to look. Because some say, he never left. If this story chilled you to the bone, make sure to hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments. What do you think really happened in Plainfield? And don't forget to subscribe for more terrifying stories from the darkest corners of history. Because sometimes the truth is far scarier than fiction. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and watch your back.